Welcome back to another Alvado video. Now in today's video, we're going to be watching a game played by Dish Soap. Now a lot of people ask me, why do you watch so many Dish Soap games? And all I have to say is that when the GOAT talks, you listen. And when the LeBron of TFT plays games, you watch. Now before we get into this game, I am very close to 1,000 subscribers and I would appreciate it if you subbed. I've been making lots of videos. And if you've learned anything from any of my videos, then I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. Okay, let's get into this game. He actually missed the carousel. I wasn't paying attention to what he was going for. I think he was going for tier because during the stream he was testing out playing AP. And so since he didn't get tier, he wanted to still try and play an AP line, so he went for Rod. He gets dropped Cloak and Belt, and we can see that he hits a Renekton 2. Now hitting this Renekton 2 actually plays a big role in how he chooses to make decisions later on in the the early game stage, because a Renekton 2 is probably one of the best 2-cost units that you can get. 2-star 1-cost units that you can get. We can see his first augment, Gadgeteen Heart. He sees that someone got Tome, literally just pops the Tome and hits Gadgeteen Heart, so he doesn't want to be contested. He also doesn't have, good items that resemble Gadgeteen items. Spark is really good in that comp, but realistically, if you're going to be playing 5 Gadgeteen, you want to carry Zoe, because Zoe is like the midsection between, being able to survive in the mid game and also capping out your board in the late game. Now he ends up going for Exiles there. Exiles, just a pretty all-around solid augment. He doesn't want to go for Metabolic because he has this Renekton 2. He thinks that he's going to be able to save HP, and he has the potential to make a really strong board because he has this Renekton 2 opener. Renekton 2 is just so broken in the early game because not only does he have like a ridiculous amount of HP because he's like this brawler-ish unit, and then he gains HP when he casts. He also just deals a lot of damage, especially when he has this Spark. Renekton deals damage based on the difference of HP totals, like his HP versus his target. That's why HP scaling on Renekton is so good. And it is magic damage that he deals, so Spark is just very strong because it allows him to, dish out a lot of damage. Now, he's able to include these hearts into his comp. He wants to, play around this Renekton, but he's not sure exactly how he wants to do it. He just naturals like a bunch of random heart units, so he tries to just put those traits together. And I want you to pay attention to his streak. So his second pick here, he goes for Chain. He now has Sunfire Cape Spark, probably the 2 best items that you can ask for in an early game situation. They're both utility items, but they are by far the best utility items in the game. If you start a game off by trying to build Spark and Sunfire Cape and you're playing around AP, then you're probably in a good spot, even if you're not playing around AP, because there's so many late game units that utilize magic damage. I'm talking about, Fiddlesticks, I'm talking about Mordekaiser, I'm talking about Nunu. And even if you're in a spot where you're playing around AP, like slamming Spark even if you're in a spot where you're playing around AD, slamming Spark sometimes isn't even like the worst decision in the world, because you know that you will always be able to utilize the Spark in the late game. Now, he often pushes levels because, like I said, he has really strong items, he has really strong units, he has like a really strong backbone of a comp here, but you can see that he lost, and then he's trying to win this round. He's going to win this round because his opponent's board is just not nearly as strong as his. Oh, wait, actually, does he win this round? Yeah, he does. And yeah, but the issue is that he's not able to hold on to a streak for most of the game. And when you find yourself in a spot like this, when you're semi-broke, he has 20 gold going into 2-7, which you want to be aiming for 30 gold, but like I said, his board is pretty strong, so it's not that big of an issue. But yeah, when you're going into a game like this, where you weren't really able to get much street gold, you're kind of broke. You don't have like a strong enough board to just guarantee a win out. Like if he just chose to sit on what he had right here, he would definitely just bleed out and he would take too much damage and he wouldn't be able to survive. But when you're in a spot like this, you need two things to happen. You either need to high roll, or you need to play out of your mind, or both, or you need to play towards a broken strategy. And so you can see he's able to get admin in here, and he rolled the hero augment very quickly because he was shown 2 cost, 2 cost, 2 cost. He had heart and brawler in. He's guaranteed to see cleansing safeguard Lee Sin. And if you do not know, this hero augment of Lee Sin's is probably the most broken 2 cost hero augment in the game, and it enables this comp to be significantly more powerful than, you know, what it is. Like this is the backbone of the comp. He also got shown the admin. The admin he ended up choosing was your team gains 25 mana at the start of the fight. And since he's playing around Vertical Heart, getting mana at the start of the fight is really powerful, because if Lulu, Sona, and Yuumi and Lee Sin all gets to front load their cast, then that means your entire team is gaining, I believe, if all of them cast 28 AP immediately. So it's kind of funny because there is one of those admins that is at the start of combat, your team gains 25 AP. But in this situation, your team gaining 25 mana is basically the same thing, because if 4 heart unit casts with 4 heart in, then you're gaining 7 AP for every single cast, so your entire team gains 28 AP. Now on top of that, you're also, you know, getting the benefit of the cast. Yuumi's gonna do some damage, Sona's gonna provide some CC, provide some healing, provide some damage, Lee Sin's going to provide that shield, Lulu's gonna do some damage, LeBlanc is gonna do some damage, Blitzcrank is going to get a little bit tankier. So you're not only gaining all that AP immediately, but then you're also getting the usefulness out of your entire team's cast a lot sooner. So combat start gain mana admin is probably the best one that you can get in a Vertical Heart comp. You also don't necessarily need the you know, the combat augments like on kill gain AP, or over time your team gains AP, because that is exactly what the heart trait is going to provide for you. If you can make use out of every single unit's ability, like if you can get the effectiveness out of all of that, then that alone is going to be able to help you stall later on in a fight, and it's going to make it so that you're going to get the stacking AP regardless. The whole point about this comp is that you basically just stall as long as possible so that your entire team turns into a carry, and it's very hard to lose endgame fights when your AP gets doubled. If you don't know, when you reach overtime in a fight, attack speed goes up and AP gets doubled. I don't know if attack speed gets doubled. I'm not 100% positive on what happens with that. But yeah, I'm curious. Look at his spot right now. He has a Blitzcrank 1, a Lee Sin 1, and then a Lee Sin 2 with the items. He has a 2-item Sona, a LeBlanc, a Yuumi, and a Poppy. So his comp, you know, it's basically as good as he could ask for his previous spot, but he is extremely broke. You can see he has literally no gold. He's not the healthiest. He essentially has no chance of making it to level 9 because of how broke he is. So I'm curious to think what you think the place that he gets this game, with how bad this spot is because of how broke he is. Yeah, I mean, look at the HP of the lobby, and take your guess right now. So he finds a heart, which is pretty funny. I don't know, like which I don't know what the thought process was in naming the trait heart. I mean, it makes sense because it's the heart trait and it's the silver heart augment, So it has to be called Heart Heart, or else it wouldn't really make any sense, but it's just funny that it's named like that. And then he's able to find this Urgot, which is like a pretty big advantage, or it's at least able to make it so that he's not going to be entirely broke for the rest of the game. Urgot also is really good in heart comps like this, because if Urgot can get at least 2 casts off, the second cast, if he gets like a really high number of AP, then he almost has like 50% effectiveness for whether or not you get a chest. Yeah, if he's able to get that second cast off, you're going to be pulling in a lot of loot. Another thing that's funny about the heart things is that Heart gives a Lee Sin, but Heart Crest gives a Yuumi. That's like pretty good to know, because in this case, Heart is actually very powerful because of how strong Cleansing Safeguard is as a hero augment, and you know, the Heart giving the Lee Sin is something worth noting, because Heart is actually significantly worse than the Crest, because you want to be able to put the Heart Crest on a unit. Now in a comp like this, he's not playing around Zoe. He doesn't really have the space to play around Zoe. So he doesn't have much use for a Heart Crest anyways, so this is like the one spot where Heart is actually good, because it just allows him to drop Lulu. He doesn't really want to have Lulu on this board. If he doesn't have Heart in the spot, then he has to play Lulu over this Urgot, but he really wants to play this Urgot on his board, so yeah. Now I haven't explained exactly why this Lee Sin hero augment is so broken and why you're playing 2 of them. The reason behind this is because, first of all, Lee Sin's mana is 70. Pretty decent chunk of mana. He actually has the highest mana out of every single heart unit outside of Syndra. I believe Syndra's mana is like 125 or something, which is really high. But Yuumi has 50 mana, I believe. Poppy has 50 mana, and Sona has 40 mana. And then also Soraka has 40 mana. So Lee Sin, out of the in between the 1 and 4 cost units, he has the most mana. When you get Cleansing Safeguard, he lowers his starting mana to 40. So he's going to be able to cast a lot more often, and that plays a role in why this hero augment is so strong. I kind of want to talk about how he chooses his items right now, though. Blue buff is by far the strongest item in this comp, and he really takes a long second in figuring out whether or not he wants blue buff or JG, because he can either choose the rod and be able to make JG, or he can choose the tier and then he can make blue buff plus shroud. But the thing is that he wanted more tank items for Lee Sin, and he also wanted to complete this final Sona item. So instead of going blue buff and maybe just throwing this blue buff on another heart unit, probably Yuumi, he just goes ahead and goes for JG and Protector's Vow, so that he can complete the Lee Sin items and he can complete the Sona items. I think it's a pretty good decision. And him taking so long there just goes to show exactly how powerful blue buff is. Because if you're able to put blue buff on any other heart unit, that blue buff is probably generating 20 to 40 mana for your team. Because if you're able to cast more often, you know, of course, more heart means more AP, or like more casting means more AP. So to continue my thought with this Lee Sin hero augment and why it's so broken, you can see he's playing 2 of them. The whole point is that Lee Sin's ability makes it so that he jumps to like another unit and then he gives them a shield, and he also shields himself. So what Cleansing Safeguard does is it does that one thing that I talked about earlier, where it makes his starting mana 40 instead of 70, so he casts a lot more often, and then whenever he casts, he heals for, I believe, 18% of his maximum HP. So if he's casting a bunch, he's taking damage, he's gaining mana, and then he's casting a bunch, and then you have 2 of them, you know, each providing each other with a shield, then they're both healing, they're both shielding, they just become extremely tanky. It's really hard to kill either of them. And then when they're next to each other, you know, they basically just get out of control with how much they're healing and shielding each other. And then since they're casting so much, they're also providing a bunch of value through heart. This sort of strategy was never really utilized early on because they actually reworked this hero augment. So this is pretty new discovery. And since he's able to provide so much more AP for the team because of how often he's casting, you can imagine how strong this type of setup is in a comp like this. Another thing to note is that Lee Sin's shields scale with how much AP they have. So if you can get to this spot where like one of the Lee Sins is still alive after like 20 seconds into the fight, then what tends to happen is the Lee Sin just provides too big of a shield for not only himself but also the unit that he's shielding, and he it just becomes too much where it just hits this tipping point. You can legitimately never kill him, and then if you can't kill him, then that means your Soraka in the back is going to start hitting AP upwards of like 400, and then it's going to get doubled, and then she's going to have like some fights legitimately like max out AP, especially when he has 6 heart in. 6 heart in means that for every single cast your team gains 10 AP. So in order to get maximum AP, it only requires, I think, 40 casts, which obviously is a lot of casts. But if each of these Lee Sins are casting, let's say, like 10 times, which isn't too unrealistic, and then the LeBlanc is casting 10 times, which isn't too unrealistic, then that means you only need a collective of 10 other casts between the rest of your heart units to hit 40. And then you hit that mark, overtime procs, your AP gets doubled, and then your AP is legitimately maxed out. Now you can see he was playing Urgot for most of the game. That's because he wanted the chests. He wanted to get more econ. But now that he's 10 HP and he's in the point of the game where it's going to be really difficult for him to survive, you can see he's utilizing this like fiddlestick strat where he's putting fiddlesticks in the back, and then Heart is getting to that point where it's providing so much AP where by the time this fiddlesticks is casting, he's going to be outputting like a ridiculous amount of damage. So this fiddlesticks is kind of like a final boss type of fiddlesticks. I mean, look at his opponent's board right now. He's literally fighting against a level 9 board, Spirit of the Exile, Laser Core build. He has an Aphelios 2, an Urgot 2, a Mordekaiser 2, and a Fiddlesticks 2. And you want to know what Dish Soap has for a frontline? 2 Lee Sin 2s. The difference in how much his board costs versus his opponents is like ridiculous. His board costs probably about like 60 gold, and then his opponent's board probably costs like more than twice that. And somehow he's able to win a fight. But he doesn't win just one fight. He's able to continue to win. With his, cheap board, not a single 2-star or 5 cost, not a single, look at his front line. He finds a Star Guardian crest off of one of the late game carousels. He's able to get Star Guardian in, so this Lee Sin is casting more. His front line is legitimately a Blitzcrank 2 and 2 Lee Sin 2s. His front line is 15 gold. His opponent has literally like more gold invested into his board just on like 2 backline units. And somehow he wins that game. Like, what? Like, did you see his spot on stage 6? He had legitimately like 10 gold with half of his board upgraded. He didn't have a single 4 cost. He he didn't have any gold pumped into like the next level. And somehow he was able to just itemize this Lee Sin. It kept him healthy enough where he didn't bleed out. He got to a point in time in the game where he was able to go level 7. He hit 2-star Lee Sins. He was able to high roll an Urgot. The Urgot was able to get him to a spot where he could have enough money to get to the level 8. And then he found a Soraka 2, and then he legitimately just did not lose a fight after that. Like, what? This hero augment combination is by far one of the most broken ones, and since you have 4 hero augment rerolls, it is very common that you see players playing this and is really easy to abuse. If you ever see a 2-cost hero augment and want to play this comp, you know, you have 4 rerolls, you might as well just try and go for it anyways. Good luck climbing with this. Hopefully you learned something in this video. Like the video if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.